Welcome back to another episode of This Week in the NHL. Today we are going to explore the ups and downs from every division in hockey, from roller coaster starts to surprising struggles, all the way to new stars taking over the league. This week has plenty of storylines that we need to explore, so let's keep this intro short and sweet. If you guys have been enjoying the content lately, toss this one a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into every division breakdown. Starting out east, let's begin with the Metropolitan division and a team that has been very surprising to start the year for me, the Philadelphia Flyers. The Metro division has easily been the most surprising of them all this year, and if the playoffs started today, the Philadelphia Flyers would actually be in the postseason. And I think that the one player they can really thank for all of this is Trevor Zegras. Zegras has been putting on a show nearly every night, from contributing with goals to making these unreal passes to simply just putting on a clinic in shootouts. And when you couple that with the play of Couturier and Konechny, the Flyers have themselves a team that could legitimately compete in this Metropolitan division. Now, obviously, there are some problems with this Philly team, even though they have a lot of bright spots, and I think the biggest negative you can take away so far has been the play of Matvei Michkov. He's currently only averaging half a point per game as his pace after coming off such a strong rookie year, and I think that for Philly, I've mentioned this in my last breakdown of this team, they are going to need him to pick up the pace because eventually maybe people are going to start figuring out Trevor Zegras a bit more and taking him out of the equation, or maybe he'll just slow down at some point. And when that does happen, Philadelphia needs to have someone else who can step up to take some of that attention away from Zegras and maybe open up the ice for him even more. So Matvei Michkov is going to be the key to unlocking this team fully, and once he starts putting up the points again, I think the Philly is going to be a tough outing nearly every game. So great start for Philadelphia. Very surprised to see the production from this team, and specific shout out to Trevor Zegras, who has been unreal to start the season. Speaking of players who are on teams that we had very limited expectations towards, I think it's time we give the New York Islanders a little segment, but more specifically talk about Matthew Schaefer and the incredible job he has done in turning around this New York Islanders team. Now, the Islanders are still around the bottom of the Metro, ethically tanking for a chance at Gavin McKenna, but this kid Matthew Schaefer, he's the real deal. Schaefer is not only second in rookie points right now behind Demidov for the Calder race, but he's tied for fifth in league points among defensemen with the likes of Josh Morrissey and Adam Fox, guys who are highly regarded as some of the best defensemen in the world. Schaefer has quite literally brought this Islanders team back to life. They were struggling to get fans in their own barn and were carrying that boring notion for years, and he has almost overnight made them into an exciting team that a lot of people want to watch now. I think this is a kid that a lot of other teams are going to be game planning for years. He just skates so well, and honestly, it's really cool to see the rest of this team just rally behind him whenever he's in a little scrum or gets involved in any sort of action on the ice. Really, the best part about this kid, though, is the pure love he has for the game, how much he has embraced being an Islander, and just the personality he carries with him on and off the ice. It's honestly so incredible to watch, and I couldn't be more happier for him. So good on the Islanders. They may not have a winning record, but they definitely have themselves a player. As for the rest of the Metro, things are about the same as last week, with New Jersey, Pitt, and Carolina rounding out the top, playing with the same momentum. For Pittsburgh, they'll be playing without Justin Brazeau for a few weeks, so that's a tough blow. But on the bright side, Malkin and Crosby are playing some of their best hockey in years, with Malkin leading the team in points and Crosby being near the top of the league in goals. At this age, it's just honestly remarkable. Rangers still sit at the bottom, but they have picked up a few gutsy wins along with Columbus, who has done the same. Meanwhile, the Capitals continue to struggle with scoring and have dropped to 500, so let's keep a close eye on them. And lastly, like I said, Philly has been fun, staying within playoff reach in a Metro division that has been surprisingly entertaining to begin the year. Moving out west, let's talk about the Central Division and the team that's currently leading the NHL in points and winning percentage, the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche have now earned points in 13 of their 14 games, but the biggest news is coming from the extension that they offered Martin Necas, who ended up re-signing with the Avalanche on an 8-year deal at an $11.5 million AAV. This has to be a huge sigh of relief, not only for Necas, but for the Avalanche organization and their fan base. After the whole Rantanen debacle last year, I think everyone was so worried about that happening again. So to see Necas sign to a pretty friendly AAV, I think that that's a perfect sweet spot for everyone who was involved. Necas is having a very strong start to the year along with the other stars in this lineup, McKinnon, Makar. They, again, are just putting up absurd numbers. But when it comes to the Avalanche, as the team who's the top in the NHL, it's hard to find any negatives. The one thing I will say about this team that I would love to see change is maybe Brock Nelson and Gabe Landeskog getting a little bit more point production. Right now, Landeskog only has 4 helpers and Brock Nelson has 5 points with 3 tucks. So maybe if they could start producing a little bit more on the stat sheet, that would help out this Avalanche team with their depth. But when you have top players in the league producing at such a high level, I guess it really doesn't matter. Another thing is that Mackenzie Blackwood is rejoining this team, and with Scott Wedgwood holding it down while he was out, putting up pretty solid numbers, this is only going to help the Avalanche even more. So yes, the team has lost a few in overtime, but they're still putting up points and their star players are producing. So congrats to Necas on that new deal, and congrats to the Avalanche for such a strong start to the season. In less positive news, the Nashville Predators were probably hoping that last year was just a one-off and they could get things back on track, but unfortunately, all of the bad things that occurred last year have gotten even worse to begin this season. Nashville has dropped a few more games, finding themselves at the bottom of their division yet again. Their goal differential is awful, and their top guys just aren't scoring, and it's very clear that the frustration is starting to boil over in that locker room. Ryan O'Reilly spoke to the media about how he is playing some of the worst hockey of his career and that he needs to be better for this group if they have any chance at finding success. And while I love the accountability and leadership coming from Ryan O'Reilly, I don't think that he's been the problem. I think it's been some of their other top guys like Stamkos, who has less than 5 points, making 8 sheets, March or so, who could be contributing a little bit more, and maybe even some of their young guys who just haven't really developed properly or taken on the responsibility of the roles that they've been given. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of trade speculation with this team for the rest of the year if they can't somehow get a few more wins. Maybe we've seen a little bit of it with Stamkos and the Vancouver rumors, or now with Ryan O'Reilly coming out and speaking about this team, maybe he'll be involved in some trade speculation. But Nashville is definitely going to be an interesting team. If they stay below 500, I'm expecting a fire sale. But at the same time, I could very well see this team rip off a few wins and get themselves back in this division because they're not out of it. There's still a lot of hockey left to play, but early on, not the best signs coming out of Smashville. As for the rest of the Central, the Mammoth and Jets stay hot to round out the top. Chicago has been playing up and down, but have had a few pretty solid wins to stay competitive, so good on them. Dallas, on the other hand, they've won the same amount of games that they have lost, even though they've grabbed quite a few points in extra minutes, so keep an eye on them. They haven't been at their best lately. And again, rounding out the bottom of the division is Minnesota, who's still off to a tough start, and St. Louis still in last place. Now let's stay over in the West to talk about the Pacific Division. 2 weeks ago, I sort of discredited the Anaheim Ducks with my breakdown, talking about how they were allowing too many goals and how that wasn't going to be sustainable. And now I think I have to eat my own words because Anaheim has looked pretty awesome these past couple weeks. Crazy how much a coaching change can do for a franchise. Last year, the Ducks couldn't get out of their own way, and this year they lead the Pacific Division and have 2 of the hottest players in hockey. Seriously, the Ducks have Cutter Gauthier, who's near the top of the league in goals, Leo Carlsson, who is leading his team in scoring and is also top 15 in points. They just aren't cooling down, and they're getting some pretty big wins against some steep competition like Florida, Edmonton, those kind of teams who we all see as cup contenders. There's really not much else for me to say about Anaheim. They're getting production from a lot of their players. They have stars that are finally breaking out, and they've gone from being sneaky good to mainstream. And a lot of their heavy criticisms from the offseason have basically been extinguished. So they deserve their flowers. Good on you, Anaheim. For once, I wish that I could have some positive news when I talk about the Vancouver Canucks, not having to rip apart their players or their future or talk about how they're just not meeting expectations. But again, they put me in this position where that's all I feel I can talk about with them. Vancouver is below 500 again and just doesn't seem like they have the horses offensively to really stay competitive in this division. Elias Pettersson, yes, he has been blocking shots and creating some opportunities. A lot of you guys got mad at me because I said he's been disappointing, but when you're making 11 sheets and you have less than a point per game pace, I think that that's a problem for this team, especially when he's supposed to be your best offensive player and he's just not producing at that level. Now, to be fair, Vancouver is getting some good production from a few players. Connor Garland is around a point per game pace, and apparently Kiefer Sherwood refuses to pass the puck with 9 tucks and 0 helpers. But even with these guys stepping up, you're still not winning games. So what happens when they start to regress and ultimately your offense dries up even more? The Canucks just are going to continue falling in their division, and for a team that I believe really needed to have a successful year because of the Quinn Hughes situation, I just don't see things getting any better, and I think that this is only going to be the beginning of a downward spiral for this franchise. So who knows? Again, like I've said with a lot of other teams, we're doing these weekly recaps and there's a lot of hockey left to play. The Canucks are still in their division. It's not like they've fallen out or in a position like Calgary is. This entire league has been filled with parity, so maybe they'll turn things around, but I'm not feeling optimistic about this team right now. And given what I've seen from Elias Pettersson, I think that maybe they made a pretty big mistake giving him that extension, or at least giving him that high of an extension and then moving on from players like JT Miller. I just don't see the direction of this franchise, and it's been a pretty big letdown so far. As for the rest of the Pacific, McDavid is back along with Macklin Celebrini, who is at the top of the league in points. Their two teams may be struggling, but hey, at least those two are doing their part. The LA Kings have dropped a few spots in their division. We might have to talk about them soon if they don't start to pick things up. Seattle and Vegas, they are keeping up a strong pace. And again, Calgary, they're still at the very bottom, grabbing a few wins, but struggling to score with this offense as they continue to be miserable for McKenna. One more division to go, and we have another roller coaster team in the Boston Bruins, who are currently on a very long winning streak and, surprisingly, back in the division race. The start of the season for Boston has consisted of long losing and winning streaks, lack of defense, lack of scoring, blown leads, and blowouts. And truthfully, this team, I think they were kind of heading in a direction that a lot of their fan base wanted, which was tanking, but now it seems like they've flipped over to the complete opposite, winning games, producing at a high level, and coming out big in the clutch. At the time of this recording, the Bruins have won 5 games in a row, and I'm sure this will change the minute I post this video. They'll go on a different streak or whatever that might be, but at this present point, they look really good. They've pulled out a few games in OT and in shootouts, and their offense is a big reason for their success. Guys like Husnudinov, Minton, and Zacha have stepped up big time for the Bruins, giving them some secondary scoring, and over this win streak, Swayman and Korpisalo have been one of the best goaltending duos in the NHL. Now, winning is great, but sustainability, like we've talked about with a lot of these teams, is more important. And I'm not sure I believe in this Boston offense to continue producing at this high level. I will say, though, they've been a lot better than I expected. I think the Bruins have shown that they're capable of keeping up with some teams in scoring. Even earlier in the year, we saw them having big scoring outputs, but not being able to keep the puck out of their own net. So now, since they are playing a lot better defensively, and we're seeing guys like Charlie McAvoy find their game again, Swayman and Korpisalo producing at a high level, I think that if the Bruins can keep all of these games to 4 or less goals, then we might see this team actually win a lot more games. Now, is that good for the franchise moving forward? I'm not so sure. I'm not the kind of guy who believes in tanking and going to the bottom of the league. I think that if the Bruins can be competitive and they can still produce and get into the playoffs, that's awesome. But I also do believe when you have no prospects and players that can go within your top 6 like the Bruins do, that it will eventually start to become problematic. So yeah, Bruins are winning. Let me know if you're a Boston fan. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? How are you feeling about this team? Because this is definitely one of the more interesting ones. 2 weeks in a row, we're doing a segment on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if you remember last week, I talked about this team saying, hey, you got to give them time. They were at the bottom of their division. They were struggling a little bit, typically like they do in October. And now we're about a week and a half into November, and they look like they're one of the top teams in the East again. Toronto has now ripped off 4 games in a row, and their top guys look pretty unbelievable. Matthews is on a 4-game goal streak. Tavares scored his 500th and is having a very underrated start thus far. And the team is playing harder, back-checking, and getting in deep. And most importantly to me, they're playing good defense, which just wasn't the case through their first 10 games or so. As for the rest of the Atlantic, same leaders. Montreal and Detroit still look unreal and hold the top 2 spots. Florida's still without Tkachuk and Barkov, and they've had their ups and downs, but I'm not overly concerned about them just yet. Ottawa without Tkachuk has also had some struggles lately. Particularly, they haven't been able to keep the puck out of their own net, so let's see if they can adjust to that. Tampa, after their horrendous start, has picked things up, and Buffalo, they're still being Buffalo, 500 and at the bottom of their division. But that's all I got for this recap. I do have a few comments that I want to read off from my last video to round this one out, with the first one coming from @ThatDangerousBacon, who says, after some great play of late, would you consider the Ducks to be a contender for a top 3 spot in the Pacific once everything is said and done? Now, if you asked me at the beginning of the year, I would have said absolutely not. I think we were more discussing if the Ducks were even going to make the playoffs. But now, given how the rest of the division looks, I think it's wide open. And if Anaheim continues to be this consistent, and if Coach Q continues to make his guys play at this elite of a level, I see no reason why the Ducks can not only be a top 3 contender for their division, but no reason why they can't win their division or even win a few playoff rounds, because they look pretty unbelievable so far. This next comment comes from @MillerTime1101, who, like a lot of people for some reason, are pretending like we were all high on the Penguins or that they predicted the Penguins to be like this. It was obvious that the Rangers would stink and the Penguins would be better. It wasn't obvious. If you look at every division prediction, people were predicting the Rangers to bounce back and be top 3 in their division, and that the Penguins are going to be in on McKenna. Is it great that the Penguins have turned things around and that they're getting such unreal production from their stars? Yes, but let's be real. I think people were definitely higher on the Rangers, and still, I believe people are expecting the Penguins to regress and the Rangers to turn things around at some point. So I'm not quite sure I buy into this narrative that there was really anybody who was high on the Penguins. And the last comment comes from @EclipseHB, who says, I'm hoping the Blues turn it around, Jimmy. I really think they will. The Blues are not a bottom of the division team. I don't think we've seen the best from Rob Thomas. I don't think we've seen the best from Jordan Kyrou, who was actually healthy scratch the other night. And I definitely don't think we've seen the best from Jordan Binnington. He's the kind of guy who's going to go to the Olympics, win gold, and then come back and rip off like a 17-game win streak. That's just the kind of player that he is. I also think that Jim Montgomery is a good coach, and he's going to figure out what's caused them to get into this slump and, I don't know, get them to be a more representable franchise like they usually do. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you to everyone who commented on that last video and watched this episode. If you enjoyed, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe now. I also have a few other episodes and weekly recaps for you to check out here if you missed them over the week. So be sure to watch those after this one. And again, thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. I will see you in the next upload.